Alrighty, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. Our announcements pretty much haven't changed. We have still have our quiz on Friday. Ed puzzles aren't going to be available after Sunday. Grades have been updated, so if you have not gone and looked at those grades, go ahead and make sure that you've turned in everything, that you don't have any messages from me, and that you're not missing anything. You will have time on Friday to work on those, as Fridays are catch-up days. So let's go ahead and go over to Canvas. If you do not have a Canvas tab open, please go ahead and open one. Alrighty. So we're going to go to Modules. We're going to go down to today's date, to the bell work that says who done it. Now, if yours is grayed out like that, that is because you have to submit this assignment before it will allow you to go on to your next assignment. So what we're going to do, I'm going to give you about 7 minutes to work on our bell work today. It is one of those who done it mystery type things. So it says someone in the took the last cookie in the cookie jar last night. The last person to leave the scene is the culprit. Who was it? And so you have a series of clues right here that you are going to use to kind of figure out who took the cookie from the cookie jar. You're going to use this diagram to also help you, and then you are going to click right here where the arrow says, where it says reply, and you are going to type your answer in the box. Once you have your answer in the box, you're going to click the submit post reply button, and it will let you see everybody else's answer. You are going to choose one person to reply to and explain why you agree or why you disagree with them and their point of view. Make sure your responses are respectful to each other, and that's what we are going to do. Does anybody have questions right now? There are no questions. I'm going to go ahead and start the timer. And Alrighty, so our time is up. So here's the question. Who do you think did it? Tell me in the chat box. Who do you think did it? Hmm. I'm seeing a whole bunch of nephew and the dog. I see one, the butler did it. I see one, the maid did it. I'm seeing a bunch of the nephew and the dog. All right, so the nephew and the dog is correct, but why is the nephew and the dog correct? Because their tracks are on the top. That is exactly correct. Good job. So that is going to kind of lead us into what our discussion is going to be about today. Today we are going to look at how rock layers are placed and how that relates to the age of the rocks. So you are going to need a copy of today's assignment. If you click the next button and have not submitted this assignment, it is going to give you a page that looks like this. You have to actually submit your bell work before you can get access to the page that we're working on today where your assignment is located. So make sure that you have submitted your bell work today. All right, so if we click here, it's going to ask us to make a copy. We're going to make a copy. It's going to look like this. All right. And it's going to kind of talk to us today about some relative dating. So with our relative dating, we talked about yesterday how we have two different ways that the Earth is dated, and that we have, I'm going to come back to this video. We have two different ways that the Earth is kind of dated. We have our absolute dating, which we talked about yesterday, that kind of just gives you an actual year. It gives you a specific date. This is 300 years old. This is 4,000 years old. It actually puts a number with the age. Today we're going to talk about relative, and relative is just kind of a ballpark figure that tells you if things are older or younger. I know yesterday we talked about absolute dating and how you can really only use that with fossils because we have to carbon date things, and you can't use carbon dating on rocks because they never lived. However, we can use relative dating with rocks because we can look at the fossils that are in there and kind of figure out how old things are and if things are older or if they're younger. We can also look at their position and tell whether they are older and if they are younger. I also told you kind of earlier this week that this particular topic with the relative dating is a really big topic. So today we are going to cover the information and the concepts, and tomorrow we're going to look at some diagrams and how they are used to kind of interpret rock layers and figure out what is younger and what is older. So let me go back to the video. Geologists and archaeologists and paleontologists kind of use that information to actually figure out how old things are. All right, so moving on from there, we're going to talk about this law of superposition today. You will be doing we have a graphic that, not a graphic, I'm sorry, an article that we will be annotating, and it kind of goes over the stuff that I'm going to talk about in the next few minutes. I'm just going to give you kind of the big concepts and kind of explain some of it to you, and then you're going to use the rest of the time to go through and answer your questions as well as annotate your article, and then you're going to turn it in when you get finished. But I do want to explain a few things to you. All right, so first we have the idea of the law of superposition. And pretty much all it is it's saying that the rock layers that are on the bottom are older than the ones on the top. So usually when I explain this, I usually kind of explain it in kind of context of laundry, because if you are not like my sons because they throw laundry everywhere. But hopefully you should be putting laundry in the basket where it goes. Same thing I fuss at them about not putting it in the basket. But anywho, the laundry that is at the bottom of the basket is probably the stuff that you wore maybe last week or over the weekend. But the stuff that's on the top is going to be the stuff that you wore yesterday. So the older laundry is going to be on the bottom. The newer laundry is going to be at the top. Where you might have some differences is, say, for instance, you were looking for, I don't know, a pair of pants and you had some money in a pocket and you needed to get the money out of the pocket. So if you go through and pull your laundry out, it might be disturbed a little bit and change. But for the most part, when you put your laundry in the basket, the oldest stuff is on the bottom, the newest stuff is on the top. And that's pretty much what the law of superposition says. We also have this geologic column. I know we were talking about this a little bit when we first started talking about fossils, as well as kind of when we were talking about the rock cycle. And pretty much this geologic column is found all over the world. The different scientists have looked at composition of rocks. They've looked at fossils that are found in the rocks and kind of created this geologic column that kind of helps them date rocks and fossils. So it has different bands. They're not quite cut straight across like that, but just like the video kind of told us earlier, that in some cases the rock gets eroded and washed away and the new rock forms on top of it. Some places it's intact just like this, but in all of the cases the older rock is going to be at the bottom and the newer rock is going to be at the top. If you look at the pictures, you'll see how there's more simplistic organisms down here and they get more complex as they go up. And that's just because we've already talked about eras, and we talked about how in Precambrian, you had some really simple life forms compared to Cenozoic that we're currently in that has some more complex ones. So that's how that is related. Next, we have what are called faults and intrusions. And with faults are the places where the crust itself is going to kind of break apart. So we talked about also how sometimes fossils can be found when they have earthquakes. And these plates that the earth kind of sits on, sometimes they slide past each other, they run into each other, or they'll separate. And when that happens, a lot of times you'll end up with an earthquake and it might move some of these different rock layers and push some things up, maybe push some things down, move apart, or what have you. But those things can also disturb rocks and kind of change the direction that some of them go in. They can also say you have a magma pocket or something like that, the magma can now come shoot up through the layers. Well, the layers would have had to already been there for them to shoot up. So this is an example in a picture where you had rocks that were already there, but then some kind of magma pocket or something happened and it created what's called an intrusion that allows your liquid rock to kind of come through and kind of change them through the cracks. Next, we have something that are called unconformities, and these are just breaks or pieces of rock that are missing from the actual geologic record. They can come from different things, and they are kind of broken into three major groups. You have disconformities, nonconformities, and angular unconformities, that they're just kind of based on the specific rocks themselves and kind of what's going on with them. So with our disconformities, you're usually going to have where you have a place or the sequence itself are going to be parallel, but they're just going to be missing. So if you look, this is kind of what was going on with the Grand Canyon, how we should have these layers of rocks that kind of start off from here, but then uplift, erosion and stuff happened and part of it disappeared, and then this part, like, it kind of pulled these numbers kind of out, and it just kind of moved them to different places and all the rest of that. With nonconformities, this is where you have rock that's kind of been pushed from the different forces. This is a lot of times what's going to happen with your earthquakes. Erosion is also going to kind of move rock and sit it kind of in different places. And but just know that the rock layers that are above the nonconformity are definitely going to be younger than the ones that are below it, and they can be way younger, not like anywhere near the time that they were actually made. And lastly, we have our angular unconformities, and these are going to be the ones that literally look like angles. These can be tilted, they can be folded. A lot of times, like I said, this is going to happen where you have a lot of earthquakes or just shifts because of those plates moving, and they can also range in years from the time that they were actually created. Alrighty. So our information that's here, which is the summary of what I just said, literally. Geologic column, we also have our faults and our intrusions here, and then we have our missing rock layers with those unconformities that are right there. So you are going to spend the rest of the time working on annotating and answering the questions that are in your document. You have 5 questions that are practice style for you guys to work on here. I just really kind of need you to understand that whole idea of superposition, as well as those intrusions and kind of what happens with fault lines. Tomorrow we are going to spend time actually looking at some of these diagrams. You will see them on your quiz. You will also probably see some on your EOGs if we do take them this year. I'm not sure because they still have not told us yet. But you will probably see a diagram on there because you're going to have to use the diagram to figure out which types of rock or which pieces of the rock were created first or last or kind of in the middle and what happened. But it's a lot to do in one day, so we're not doing it all in one day. So we're just going to focus on this part today, and tomorrow we will look at those diagrams. Does anybody have questions about what we are doing? If you do, please put them in the chat. Alrighty, I'm seeing no questions that are popping up. So you are free to go ahead and start working on your assignment. If you are watching this and you do have questions at home, please send me a message in our Canvas inbox and I will answer it for you.